Hi everyone, this is Kai from WCC, and today we'll be looking at Standard Murakumo. Now, Standard Murakumo has been this deck that people have kind of dismissed in a way. They've been saying that, oh look, it doesn't have the grade 2 Meomaru PR that buffs the entire field, so this deck is not as good compared to Pale Moon and Shadow Paladin, but the weekend has painted a totally different picture. Murakumo dominated Singapore, also dominated Europe, the Cologne standard BCS. So we'll take a look at those decks and see how those players have coped with not having that grade 2 PR and how they've built their decks to play around that idea. So we'll be looking at these decks through Vanguard EX, paid good money for it, actually has a pretty good system, so put it to work. Now, first off, we'll look at the Singapore deck list. Unfortunately, I don't have the name of the player who won with this, but right off the bat, we can see a heavy grade 3 count. Now, this is going to be pretty common, big amount of grade 3, because grade 3 is so useful in Murakumo. It's running 4 Hyugas, but it's also running 4 Shiryukis. Shiryuki is a great defensive option, great aggressive option, and it's also a nice ride, because compared to everything else in your grade 3 slot, it's more than just a glorified Excel gift marker, because it does have that random on. If this does not hit, you can get a Shiryuki from the drop set. So it kind of rarely happens, but still better. But it also has that come into play at minus 10k, so you can still continue to bash your opponent. Definitely better than everything else that you can ride, pretty much. Especially Dance's Anarch, which just doesn't even give you a gift marker. The other cards in grade 3, you've got your HYU-GA Rogue that lets you call itself from the deck and then give everything with the same name, plus 10k. Useful, but the cost is very steep. Counterblast 1 and discard 1, so you probably don't want to use this until your final turns. Tangan Nudo is just a very nice grade 3 that allows you to consistently pull off a Hyuga on the second ride. And it also lets you draw a card, so it replaces itself pretty much. The effect is just, if you have another unit with the same card name as this on the Vanguard or Rearguard circle, this unit gains boost, and at the end of each player's turn, if you have 5 or more units, you can put this into Soul and draw a card. So it also gives a nice boost, hits those nice numbers. So overall, it's just a really good card. I've seen people bump it up to 3, but 2 is fine too. Finally, Danzetsu Anarch is just one of the old cards that finally sees some play. All of your units with the same card name as all of your rear guards with the same card name as the Vanguard gains plus 5k. So since everything is a Hyuga, everything becomes fat, and then when it comes into play from the deck for that turn, it gets 5,000 power. So kind of okay effect. Well, that second effect lets itself hit like 22 and 27, so kind of relevant. Moving on to the grade 2s, the most important part of the grade 2 slot in every single Murakumo deck right now is Chakotsu Girl. Pretty much have to devote 4 cards to that because it's just so good. It's just does everything you want it to do. It searches your Shiryukis. Sometimes, even if it doesn't, it soul charges 1, which is just as good. But what other stuff has this player put in to replace Meomaru? So he's pretty much just maxed out his Fushimis. Kind of, it's okay. If you're against these Shadow Paladin players who always play Nemains or gets greedy and just plays 1 Nemain and a Sword Breaker, if you draw multiple of this, lots of pressure on that card. It'll force them to guard a lot of cards from their hand. Especially when you go second, the Fushimi is fine because against Forest Clans, you can just ignore the Vanguard and just go directly to the back row. But the interesting card here is Central Arrestor. Now, what this is basically when you put it behind your Vanguard in that slot, it can attack your opponent's Vanguard from that back slot. So, although this is only 9k, it can get power if your Vanguard is a dueling dragon. It gets 5k for each other Arrestors on the field, but you're not dueling dragons, so you don't get that effect, but that's fine, because it becomes a Hyuga, and then everything with Hyuga gets buffed up. So at least it's going to hit something like 14k, and still be able to just poke your opponent out, and then with a HYU-GA Rogue, it becomes something like 24. 19, 24, so that's pretty good numbers to hit. Nice tech, extra poke, all good. Grade 1 slots pretty much dominated by Million Rats and Rainy Madams. You're not going to remove them, but the filler slot here is done by Suke Rock, which will enable you to just get another poke with a counterblast 1 cost. It's from an old set. It's not new, But with all the buffs, with all the power buffs that you gain with the new cards, because everything becomes HYU-GA, this card actually gets kind of fat and can poke for it can do a big poke pretty much. So that's okay. That's basically a filler slot. It's running 8 crit for a draw, pretty standard there. But overall, you can see that he's basically gone for more poking cards, I guess you can say. These small extra attacks with Central, Arrestor, and these Suke-rocks to make up for the loss of Meomaru. And the maxed out Fushimi is just, it's okay. It's just there. It becomes 14k by itself, actually, the Fushimi. So a nice little poke, but just that extra utility to attack the back row is also pretty good too. Onto EU, this is a Shane Wade's deck. I think he came second at Cologne. He's got 3 Shiryukis. That's standard too. Not everyone maxes out Shiryukis because it's fine whether you hit it or you don't. He's running 2 Dansets Anarchs though, which gives him slightly more power. And he's also running 2 Hyakuvoks. The interesting part is he's running only 1 Tanganitos. Now, I don't agree with that. I think Tanganito is low-key one of the sleeper best cards in this deck because it just enables your HYU-GA to always get that field wipe whenever you need it. So if this goes to damage zone, you will feel very, very sad unless you're holding 2 HYU-GAs. Moving on to the grade 2s, he's only running 2 Fushimis. Similar to the VMC list, the VMC list ran like 2 Fushimis and 4 Miyamarus and 4 Jakotsu Girls, so I'm not wrong. Fushimi was there just as filler. This is the same thing. But the key card here is he's running Spellhounds. Now, this Spellhound is from the new set. It enables... It's basically like a self-replicating card, free advantage. Doesn't require Counterblast. When it comes into play, you Soul Blast 2 and search your deck for up to 1 Stealth Beast Spellhound, which is this card. Call it to the rear guard circle and shuffle your deck. And increase or decrease that unit's and this unit's power to match your Vanguard's power until end of turn. So pretty much you call it out at grade 2, it'll just come out all as 9Ks, still hits. Played at grade 3, everything comes out as 12Ks, so it will hopefully still hit unless you're facing against force. But overall, it's like a nice free card you use to gain some extra cards out to beat with. And you can see why, that's why he's probably lowered the account of Shiryukis as well, simply because it's a heavy Soul Blast cost. Yeah, with the grade 1s, we can see him still running the standard stuff, which is pretty normal. And he's also sticking with the Suke-rocks. The Suke-rock is a nice extra, just a nice extra attack. And he's not, this deck's not really Counterblast heavy. The only thing you need is for the HYU-GAs and the Million Rats. Everything else is pretty much just Soul reliant, which is again why Jakotsu Girl is so good. Now, the trigger lineup is kind of strange. He is only running 2 crits and 5 fronts and 1 extra draw. So here, this is fine. This is fine. We can see that maybe he's playing mind games. He thinks maybe he wants his opponent to think he's just running the standard 8 crit lineup, but bam, fronts come out and suddenly his opponent's just going to take 1 billion damage, can't guard anything. Surprise, surprise, welcome to BCS. That's fine. The trigger lineup in the end is still kind of up to you, as long as you're not playing something absurd like 8 draws, which might become somewhat of a problem. But running fronts in this deck, I think, is okay. It's not like you're trying to restand 1 crit column or something like that. So fronts are fine. Basically up to the player preference. Now, onto the deck that I've kind of been playing with as well. You can see it's pretty similar to the Cologne list. The grade 3 lineup is pretty much nearly the same, except I'm only running 1 Hyakuvoke and 2 Tanganitos. A fun fact, I did actually bump this Tanganito count up to 13 at some point and just ran 10 grade 1s and 10 grade 2s, but I just didn't really feel exceptionally comfortable with that, so I just took 1 Tanganito out. With the grade 2 slots, the big difference is I'm running Bloody Mist. Now, this is basically a grade 2 Million Rat. Counterblast 1, you just call itself out from the deck and minus 4k to it. So, it's similar to Spellhound, except Spellhound gets big, I guess. The power, it will always hit at the cost of 2 Soul Blasts. This requires only 1 Counterblast, which in my opinion is fine, because the only Counterblast you're really using for this deck is HYU-GA, Million Rat, and Stealth Beast. Bloody Mist. And if you use Bloody Mist just once off, you're pretty much fine. If you draw like a Million Rat or a Bloody Mist when you're at grade 2, pretty much just set up some nice decent columns and always hit and put pressure on your opponent early to kind of make up for the fact that you don't have that huge amount of big power gain with Meomaru later on. But just being able to beat early is able to kind of push your opponent or pressure your opponent enough that it doesn't really matter. And then the other big difference I'm running is I'm running Jiraiya. The reason why is personally I don't like Sukerock that much, so I'm running Jiraiya to kind of be like a more of a stable grade 1. Since we're running so many grade 3s, this will, when we ride this, enables us to just draw one and put one of those grade 3s back if we have too many of it, especially if it's something like Downsides to Honor. Just put it on the bottom, ensure we'll always get it, and make sure that we won't have to ride it. Now, it does have another effect. Just, you can counterblast 1 and give your Vanguard 10k. So, technically speaking, if you play this with a Spellhound, you can use this effect, then use Spellhound to make everything come out like 22k. So, overall, it's not that bad if you want to play it with Spellhound. I think it's very... You can kind of choose between Sukerock and Jiraiya, and that kind of works. I'm running 8 crit and 4 draw, 4 heal. Nothing really special about that, but just the main difference is that I'm running the Bloody Mist and the Jiraiya. This deck is slightly heavier counterblast in a way compared to the other decks, but that's fine. I've found that the games usually end when I reach my 5 counterblast limit, so I've never really had an issue where I'm starving for a counterblast. Because you really have a lot of other options. You can use Shiryuki as more pressure tool as well. So, yeah, overall the deck doesn't require a lot of counterblast. And yeah, this last grade 2 slot and this last grade 1 slot are basically the replaceable cards. The rest of the deck is just tweaking around your grade 3s. Do you want to run 1 or 2 Dances Anarch? Do you want to run 1 or 2 Hyakuvogs? And through that, you'll basically just have created your deck in English. And then when you finally get the PRs, prepare to shell out a large amount of money to just replace this grade 2, and bam, your deck is done. So that's pretty much it for standard Murakumo at the moment. It is really surprisingly dominating every scene, and I thought it'd be it'd be a bit more balanced, but looks like lots of people are on that Murakumo train. Especially, apparently, Hyuga's really cheap. So overall, good deck. Look out for it. It's going to be around in tournaments. It's going to bottom deck, well, not bottom deck. It's going to send back everything on your field, and it feels bad when you're Shadow Paladin. So look out for it. Excel meta, blah, blah, blah. See you in the next video, guys. Bye.